Welcome to the Word Podcast. The Lord God has given us His Word. Let us learn it. Let us live it. Let us rejoice in it. Spread the Word.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining with me today on the Word Podcast. This is Dale. Tell you what, hang on. We've got a great one here, some things to look at. Again, I'm not sure how long it'll take me to get through some of this stuff, you know. I used to hear preachers and teachers say that kind of stuff all the time. And I'd go, just shut up, get with it, and you do it in 5 minutes. Well, that's true. You should be able to explain an hour-long message in 5 minutes. Really, in about a minute. Be able to give the synopsis of it. So here's the synopsis of this. Do not love the world. We saw that in the last episode in 1 John 2:15. Listen to what he said. Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And that's pretty cut and dry, isn't it? If somebody loves the world, well, how do we know if somebody loves the world? You'll know by their fruit. Remember, people say, well, you're not supposed to judge me. The Bible says not judge me, because unbelievers particularly know that verse, right? This is true. But it does say that we can be fruit inspectors, particularly in relationship to those who profess to be believers. So if anyone loves the world and loves the love of the Father is not in him, you will know by the pursuits of their life. You'll know by what they put time and resources in. You'll know by their discussion and their dialogue and the way they act and the way they behave. You know, is there a joy and a zealousness about the things of the kingdom, or is there more joy and zealousness about, let me pick on something about myself, college football? Okay. So we don't want to be like that. We don't want to love the world nor the things of the world. Now, that doesn't mean that you're some type of an ascetic fuddy-duddy, okay, that you don't enjoy anything. No, the Lord gave us the world, and we'll see more about this as we go through all these things just from now on. There's so many subtopics that just underneath the surface here, okay? No, we enjoy the life the Lord has given us. We enjoy the things of the world. We use the things of the world to His praise and His honor and His glory. But we don't love them in the way that the world loves them. We don't love them in the way that becomes idolatry. Now listen to the next verse. Verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. Whoa. Now, let me read that again. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. So there's three things that are delineated right there, okay? Three things are pointing out that we are to be totally aware of, okay? Let me read this from the Lexham. The Lexham puts verse 15 and 16 all as one sentence. It says this, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him, because everything that is in the world, the desire of the flesh, desire of the eyes, and the arrogance of material possession, the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. Well, I tell you, that sort of strikes home with everything, doesn't it? Let me tell you how far back this goes. And I probably just going to have time to go back and read it, and maybe we'll discuss it later, maybe a little bit today. We can see how it goes. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. Yeah, every time you hear that going back, you know, okay, here we go. And it's in Genesis 3, beginning with verse 1. I want you to listen now. Listen carefully, because you're familiar with this account. And quite often, familiarity will rob us of things, okay? But I just want you to see that which is spoken of in 1 John 2:16 is really the strategy of the evil one from the beginning. Here's Genesis 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. Now this serpent right here, I won't get into it right now, but again, this will be something we'll just touch base on as we just continue through the Word. This serpent was not a snake literally in the sense that we know a snake. This was a divine being. In the same way that there are human beings, there are divine beings. Okay, other Elohim. Okay, Elohim. And with that understanding that God has humans that are part of His body, but that He also has divine as part of His body, divine beings as part of His body, that answers a lot of questions. And here's one of the first questions is, I've always wondered, why didn't this woman think it a little strange that a snake was talking to her? Or why was she not struck strange with the fact that there were other people in the garden? Because, growing up, I always thought it was just Adam and Eve and there's nobody else around. No, there was Adam, there was Eve, there were animals, there were other divine beings, because Eden was the throne room of God, and God was there, not just making guest visitations late in the evening to go take a stroll with him. This was God's throne room. And literally, here's what we're looking at, folks, is that what we see at the very beginning right here is where we are headed to, what you see at the end of the book of Revelation, okay? What we see here is where heaven and earth are one. This is, God was here, and these other divine beings were around. But one particular divine being was put out, so he sought to deceive man. And this divine being said to the woman, "Indeed, has God said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden?" In other words, he's saying, hey, are you really sure that God has said this? See, now what should her response have been? Yes. You said yes, it should have been. The woman said to the serpent, going to inform this dude, "From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you shall die." This is what man does right here. God didn't say that. God had told Adam not to eat from this tree, and then he created Eve, and the assumption is that God either told Eve or Adam told Eve. But God didn't say anything about touching it. She added that. Now, we don't know how that came about. Was it she's just improvising right now, and that's the way she sort of viewed it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But she was equating this with the words of God. Had Adam communicated to her that way, to where she wouldn't touch it? We don't know. But then the serpent said this to the woman, "You shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Well, see, Adam and Eve had not even been approached with good and evil. They didn't know there was such a thing as good and evil. They were good. They were perfect. They were walking with God, et cetera, et cetera. So what is this knowing good and evil thing? This kind of thing, was God holding something out on us? Now watch what happens right here, verse 6 and 7. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate, and she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. Something happened. Well, we know what it was. They now knew good and evil, whatever that means, and we'll continue examining that as we go through various things, right? But they realized that now they were naked. Well, what happened to them where they weren't naked before? Me personally, I think the Shekinah glory of the Lord lifted off of them. They were shortly thereafter expelled from the Garden of Eden, because that's God's throne room. That's God's place, and God could not have them there in that way. But the thing I want us to look at today is what we saw in verse 3. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate of it. What does that sound like? 1 John 2:16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life, the same three things. Okay? With her, it was delight to the eyes. Okay, that was good for food. She saw it was good for food. So that's like the lust of the flesh. And it was the delight to the eyes. The second one in John, 1 John, is the lust of the eyes. Over in Genesis, it's desirable to make one wise. In 1 John, the boastful pride of life. They all three line up, folks. It's the same strategy. It's the same idea, of which we must be aware and be forewarned, that this is not of the Father, but it is of the world. We'll continue on with this later, okay? Thank you for your time. I'll see you then.